G'day, ZiggyD here with some pretty big Path of Exile news for you guys today. In a recent development manifesto, Chris Wilson came out and said that there's going to be some pretty significant drop rate buffs to various item types in the upcoming patch 2.0.3. So let's go through what each of these changes are and speculate on some of the impacts they might have on the game. So first up, we have some changes to the drop rates of leveling items. First up, Brightbeak and Goldrim, which inexplicably were made much more rare. Well, they have had their drop rates reverted to their pre-awakening amounts. It always confused me why Brightbeak and Goldrim were made to be super rare and all of a sudden became super expensive items and really out of reach as leveling items. If you found one, you wouldn't really use it as a piece of leveling gear in hardcore. You'd be more likely to try and sell it just to get the cash to buy a bunch of other leveling gear instead. It was kind of strange. So that has been reverted, which makes a lot of sense to me. Also, Stormcloud and Wake of Destruction, two powerful elemental leveling items, have had their drop rates increased as well. This is very good news for bow leveling because elemental bow leveling is in a pretty decent spot, but this is going to give some very nice strong options for uniques for leveling elemental bow characters. Stormcloud itself is actually a really good leveling bow and can carry an elemental bow character all the way into maps as well. Now the next category that's been changed is Divination Cards. According to Chris, many Divination Cards have now been made more common. He followed up by saying, while their intention is to not make Divination Cards a trivial shortcut to wealth acquisition, they now have enough data to be able to raise some of their drop rates in a pretty safe way. The end result should be that they'll be a lot more farmable now. This is really good news in my mind. I was really hoping that Divination Cards would become another alternate form of endgame content. Rather than farming maps or at Siri or doing boss runs, you could farm specific zones for specific Divination Cards. Now, some people were doing this, but I didn't think it was having enough of an impact. So hopefully we've gotten some drop rate buffs to some of the more interesting Divination Cards set that players will now be able to pick different zones to be able to farm. And finally, the big kahuna, the Moby Kiduku of these changes. All rare and super rare unique items now drop 4 times as often as they previously did. Chris follows up by saying, yes, that this means there'll be 4 times as many Mjolnirs and Shavronne's wrappings dropping. So this implies that all tier 1 and tier 2 uniques, the super rare GG items for the most part, will drop 4 times more often. Now, these items are very rare, and a lot of people are making the joke, well, 4 times nothing is nothing. And well, yes, there's some legitimacy to that joke. Them having a super low drop rate base and then being multiplied by 4 times means that most of us are still not likely to find a Shavs or a Mjolnir. But it does mean that there are, on average, going to be 4 times as many of these items in the economy, and that's the important point here. There's a couple of effects that this can have, but the most likely outcome is that these items become more obtainable. ZiggyD said that many of these items are important components of powerful endgame builds, and while they like the fact that it takes massive effort to complete sets for these sorts of builds, it was probably too much. They're hoping that increasing the drop rates in this way means that more players will get to play builds that were previously gated behind trade wealth. So while it's likely that these items become cheaper and more attainable, and many of them probably will, the market can sometimes be a little strange. While supply increasing usually means a drop in price, other things can happen in an economy as well. We may see that an increase in the availability of certain high-tier items might lead to an increase in popularity of these sorts of builds, and that could potentially outstrip the actual supply. So things might not change that much, or they could. It's a little early to see just yet. So this doesn't mean you're going to be picking up Shabs for 10 Chaos or Mjolnirs for 2 Chaos or anything like that, but I think that this is a pretty good change. These items are still going to be rare and expensive, but they're going to be something that hopefully most players can hope to attain in a challenge league now. If, of course, they put the effort in, do the trading and the farming required to get that wealth. Now, there's a final point here. While rare items and super rare items have had their drop rates multiplied by 4, this won't be applying to old uniques from old leagues. These are the ones that you have to enter Zana maps to chance and so on. Chris said that these sorts of items are meant to be next to impossible to get. Now we can probably guess that from this also implies that divination cards that give uniques or super rare uniques from previous leagues probably won't have their drop rates increased. These will probably stay super rare. And guess what, guys? This is the final piece of good news. This patch 2.0.3 is live now. So good time to jump back in and maybe check out some of those new Divination Card drop rates, pick up a couple cheap leveling uniques soon, and maybe start planning for some of those high tier GG builds with those tier 1 uniques that should hopefully soon start to become a little more common. Anyway guys, that's it for now. I'm ZiggyD, and thanks for watching.